Well, hello everyone. Welcome to People Who Make Things. We have a working title now. It's a little step up from whatever this is. I'm your host, Christine Lee, sales engineer here at Inductive Automation. And today we've got someone truly special in the studio. She's been making things happen behind the scenes for many incredible things for a whopping 12 years at IA, including this podcast. And she's our resident media whiz. Get ready to dive into the world of creative production with the one and only Joanna Cortez, our multimedia manager. Yay! Hi!
Hi.
Welcome! How are
Yeah, thank you for that
you?
was I'm good. That was a super sweet intro. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm blushing, which you probably can't tell because the lights are so bright.
You're welcome. Um, so let's just dive into things, and I just want to ask you what your background is, and how did you get into inductive automation?
So, my background, I guess, is in graphic design. That's what I went to school for. That's what I got my degree in. And I actually never applied to inductive automation. I guess, kind of headhunted by the director of marketing at the time. And she reached out to me because a professor had name dropped me because I was really into like animation when I was in school. Like that was kind of my whole thing. I was very nerdy about it. I was the only one in the class that really loved like After Effects and making graphic design move on screen. And so my professor dropped my name and then I got a call from the director of marketing here. And so that was kind of my first introduction to inductive automation and this whole world that has become my life for the last 12 years.
Did you have another life before inductive automation or before going to school, or was this your first job like right out of college?
Yeah, I've had various jobs doing all kinds of stuff, random jobs, and then college, worked for like a year, and then I got a call to come interview here. So this is definitely inductive automation is definitely my first like actual career, like real job. Yeah, for sure.
But basically, you've been with inductive automation your whole I I almost said adult life, and I was like, no, that's not the right word.
I would say that's accurate. The adult life, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got hired to be a graphic designer, specifically to do animations for video projects because when I first got the call about inductive automation, I did that first step that everyone does. You know, you go to the website and you try to figure out, okay, what the heck is this company? What are they all about? And the website 12 years ago did not look like it does today, where it's all, I mean, it was fine, like no shade to whoever designed it. I just remember there was no inductive university, there was no YouTube channel, there was no case studies. It was a pretty bare bones basic website. And I just remember thinking like, what the heck do they even want me to do? I just remember thinking like, what is SCADA? What is any of this? I'm just looking at this website, seeing all of these acronyms and technical jargon, and just thinking, oh my gosh, I'm just going to look like an idiot in this interview trying to get a basic understanding of what ignition is, what inductive automation is. I obviously did enough research to tell them that I kind of knew what I was talking about. Yeah,
That's interesting because when I interviewed, I had an idea of what ignition was because I used it ever since I started in this adulthood career. But it is an interesting concept. Honestly, very foreign to people who are not in this industry, or even just engineers too. Like, what is SCADA? What is HMI? Like, what is this thing? But it makes sense when it clicks. Yeah, I just love getting to work at a place that gets to like touch a lot of different industries, different things. So with 12 years here at Inductive, what are some exciting moments from your time here? Like any big releases, significant milestones, interesting case studies that you were a part of, etc.
Yeah, I mean, yes to all of that. I think one of the, well, there's a couple. I think one of the biggest milestones for sure was the birth of the conference. Like when we started doing, the Ignition Community Conference, ICC, that obviously was not something that we were always doing. That's something that we started doing in like 2013. And it was either Don Pearson or Steve Heckman that said in a keynote, they're like, we weren't even sure anyone was going to show up when we started this thing. We were like, everybody come talk to us and meet us. And we were like, it just probably, we'll see how this goes. And everybody came and they demanded we do it again. And so then we just started holding it every year. So being part of that first group when there was only like 50 of us in the building to kind of come up with like, how do we do a conference was pretty exciting. I would also say Inductive University was really cool. That was a really big thing that again was kind of fun because we got to design like what is the logo going to look like, what are these courses going to be, how are we going to build out this website, and yeah, that just turned out to be a massively successful thing that again, you just kind of have this idea and you run with it and you want to see how the community is going to respond to it. So yeah, that was another really big exciting one. I feel like I could go on. Like there's been a lot of really big milestones. This
Oh,
I don't want this to just turn into Joanna reminisces about all the cool things.
but that honestly, that is the episode. It's not me really. Listen, these podcasts are not about me. It's about people that I yap to. How do you market something that might not be like exactly sexy, like industrial automation and manufacturing, and make it appealing? I mean, to people in this industry and like nerdy people, I guess. I don't even like the term like nerdy, but to certain people, like it might be sexy. But if you like grabs up a stranger and said, "Do you find industrial automation like really appealing and like really interesting?" They might not say yes. So how do you market that and market it to be appealing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's a couple parts to that. One, I think making it visually interesting certainly helps. That's why we have like, I think like four or five graphic designers on our marketing team, trying to come up with ways to visually represent all of these very technical ideas. It's a very simple video, but the one that was made, gosh, it was probably like 15 years ago or something at that point. It's just like this animated, it's a very simple animation, but it's just like, it's a very simple story, just showing the struggles of somebody on the plant floor trying to get these machines, these devices to talk to each other. And then Ignition like rolls in, they got the little inductive automation wheel rolling in. A big part of what our marketing team does is spending a lot of time on the visuals to create, these infographics and iconography and the architecture diagrams and really kind of just making it visually appealing in a way that will resonate, with audience. Like when you talk about tags and stuff, like that's not a physical thing. You have to like create these little graphics for it, and that's for everything. I do also think that just kind of speaking to the heart of the pain points, I think the pain points is always really a big one. We have a bunch of PDF banner poster diagram stuff of like all the different pain points around workability and time and cost and money on the like the integrator portal that people can download. I remember Steve Heckman talking about the pain points back in the day, and it's just like this list, hundreds of pain points that Ignition solves. And I just think you just kind of bring that to somebody's attention and say, are you struggling with this? This might be a solution for you. And then you can download it for free and just try it and see if it does what we say it does. So that was probably a terrible answer, but I think really the at least from branding, it's making things visually interesting, obviously, but then also just really focusing on just the things that are going to make the integrators' lives better, make the engineers' lives better, make, things just easier.
It's like, how do you distill something complex, something that you just cannot, like, something intangible too? And how do you distill that into a nice infographic or a nice graphic? And if you think of, like audiences, it's not just engineers in this ecosystem. It's like the key stakeholders not might not be technical people. So how do you appeal to those people? And it's magical sometimes where I go on like I go on a case study or just like any article that would have like, for example, I think I was looking at some of like MQTT articles or MQTT like pages, and someone distilled it into a really nice architecture, and I was like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, and it looks nice. It's not like it doesn't look like someone kind of like whiteboarded it. It looks nice. It looks sleek. It looks modern. It scratches a little like scratchy place in my back of my brain. Like, yes, UI look good. But it's fascinating to really like sit back and observe that, because sometimes like you just take it for granted until you encounter something like, whoa, that's confusing and I don't like how that looks. I think we do a really good job.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up the case studies. I mean, that's obviously a really big piece of the marketing side of it too, is, for obviously for the first 10 years of inductive automation, it was us, trying to communicate with the masses, talk to the community as any new company, I think Carl and Colby were going to like trade shows and just like handing out CDs, when they were like 19, and they're just like, try Ignition. And yeah, it's like we were trying
Wait,
to, I'm not even
in my
joking.
head, it's just like,
I'm sure that they had a pitch that was much better than please try this, but I mean that's how it is. It's like you're just trying to figure out like how do we talk to people? How do we sell this? How do we like any, I mean, that's what marketing is, but it's like fast forward to now at the time of this recording, we're in 2025, and it's just like it's kind of wild that you have so much social proof now. You have so many stories. People are sharing their solutions on social media, and they're reaching out to us to say, hey, we built this really, really cool thing. Can we show it off at the conference? Can we do a case study? And so, we went from how do we tell the world about this to now we have all these people reaching out to us who want to do case studies. And that's been obviously a huge part of my role is the case studies and actually getting to go out there and see these builds and see what people are doing with it in real life. And it was interesting because you were asking me about like how do you make something that's this technical like sexy or hot. It's always really funny to me because I'm out there in like we went out to like George Reed for Factory Technologies, which is like a quarry. We went out to a foundry in Kansas. We went out to we do oil and gas, and they always say the same thing to me. To me, it feels like I'm on another planet. And this is all just like magical and beyond anything that I know. And they always are like, is this interesting? Is any of this interesting? And my mind is just blown. Like they to them, they're just like, this is just what I do every day. And I don't know if it's cool or not. And I'm just like, this is all really fascinating stuff, and you should be very proud of yourself because other people are going to see this and be like, wow, I promise.
I think the most recent case study that came out as of the recording was with Gray AES and Castle and Key. A little shout out to my former coworkers over at Gray AES. It used to be Gray Solutions. It got merged into a new entity. But I remember when that project was, being still worked on, being developed, back when I was a part of Gray Solutions. And it's so fascinating to kind of see my worlds combine, where it's like, oh, I see familiar faces presenting in that video, presenting information about the project. But also, I've been to Castle and Key when I used to live in Lexington, so that was also another interesting experience. Yeah, it was like down a little memory lane for me, but it's also kind of a realization of this industry is vast. It's incredibly big because it encompasses a lot of different parts, different industries, different verticals. I think verticals might be the most appropriate word. But it's so small too. Like, people, it's, speaking of ICC, I know like people who have been to the first ICC. I've talked to a couple of them, and they've said like it's so incredible to see like what it was and what it became to be now. And I mean, but even outside, beyond the world of ignition, it's like this industry is small, but it's big, but it's small. And I love it. I love being a part of it.
Yeah. I think one of the first projects I ever had to do as a graphic designer, we were just putting together like these little pamphlets to hand out to students. I feel like I should know this. They probably still do this. They used to do like student career fair type things, but like in the office, and they'd bring in all these college students, and we would hand out these little pamphlets. And I just remember being like, ignition is everywhere. And so it was like, ignition is in food, and ignition is in water, and ignition is making all these little graphics. And it's always really cool to see. You get sad that you can't name a lot of these companies because of NDAs, but it's like, oh my gosh, sometimes when I see the names of companies that we're going to go film for or do case studies for, or yeah, I'm just like, oh my God, it's so
I
cool.
know there are some things that like out in the wild, out and about, I'll be like, I can't say it, but you know what? Even the things that are public are really cool.
For me personally, one of the coolest ones was I mentioned it earlier, but when we got to go do the foundry, yeah, it was a project for Fairloy in Wichita, Kansas. They're an iron casting foundry, and it was cool because we did that one with their integrator was Artec Integrated Solutions, which has very, very close ties to inductive automation. Like a lot of their core people were from here initially, and they went and they founded their own integration company, and they're just right down the street here in Folsom. And so we got to fly out to Wichita for this iron foundry, and I don't, I think I thought that a foundry was going to be like the fires of Mordor. I thought it was just going to be hot and dangerous and dusty. And I went in there just prepared to be like, this is going to be a terrible shoot. I wore like just garbage clothes that I didn't care if they got ruined. And then it was like surprisingly cool in there. Like my videographer and I, we had our sweatshirts on the whole time. It was clean. It was like nice. It smelled good. I just was really
It
shocked
smelled
that a
good.
foundry was like no. It yeah. Like I thought it was gonna smell like a fire or something. That's what I thought. And it was cool because it was this weird blend of like old school, technology where they're, smelting things and melting down metals and doing the iron casting. But then there was this whole separate room that was all this like new technology. I don't know where I was going with any of that, just to say that, yeah, ignition is everywhere. And sometimes when you see the industries that it's in, it can be a real learning experience.
Dallas Fort Worth Airport. That's my favorite. My favorite experience, or not experience, favorite example of ignition being everywhere. Just because I'm a huge fan of planes. Huge fan of not only like just not all the planes, but like commercial planes. Like here's my Boeing 787, and here's my little Delta plushie. But anyway, that was sorry. But I flew into DFW many times because it's like one of the biggest hubs in the U.S. It's the hub for American Airlines, and my aviation heart. I'm like DFW has a special heart or a space in my heart. So it was really cool to see DFW on the like that list of where ignition is.
Oh yeah, I know we have a couple of airport case studies for, yeah, everything from baggage claim to the de-icing one. That was one of the earliest ones I ever did. The ignition being used for like the de-icing trucks, just these things you don't think about. I was like, I'd never even seen a de-icing truck. I didn't even know what the heck that was before we did a case study about it.
But what would be your favorite in terms of like your favorite marketing project that you've done or marketing like piece that you've created?
There's I was like, do I have time for two? I mean, one of my favorite ones is I think it was the Build-a-thon for 2024 where it was like that intro video that was like,
in the lands of ignition.
we had a professional voice actor and we were talking about how two teams would battle for the fabled orange jacket. There was some line, and Matthias Abajian, our video content producer, he like went out into the forest with this jacket to like film it like floating in the magical forest. And we took all of like the branding and stuff that the branding team had done and like animated it, to kind of fit this like D&D dragons magical theme. Again, you would never have thought that you would do stuff like that working at a software company for the manufacturing industry, but that was just so cool. And it's especially cool because you get to see it on the big screen with everyone else enjoying it at the same time. It's a pretty cool thing. But I was gonna say the one that will always be in my heart forever is actually the first animated video I ever did, which is just like that little animated explainer video that's just like, if you're, an integrator, I can't even remember the words to it, but it's just very simple. It's just talking about what Ignition does. Very simple graphics, talks about the modularity, talks about all that stuff, historian alarming. And it's Carl Gould's voice. So he's recording the voiceover for it. And like, I was brand new. I did not know what I was doing here. I still did not really know much about what Ignition was. Carl was a complete stranger to me, and I put him in a closet to like record this script, a literal closet. And then we played that video at like some big company meeting, and I just remember everybody like just being really excited. And Wendy Lynn Heckman stood up and she just goes, "Is that Carl's voice?" And everyone just went, "Ah!" It was the first time we had done something like that, like a animated explainer video type thing. It's a core memory because I just was like, this is the place for me. Everyone here is really funny and cool, and it was a fun project.
The introduction videos and stuff would also be a surprise to us. I think it was Kevin playing the piano, and Kent is just like this with a microphone. And I remember being like, I don't know where I'm working. Where am I? But I joined a little too late for development of Build-a-thon, but I joined in time for testing. So that was my first foray into Build-a-thon, and I remember being like so mesmerized by like all the graphics as well as like the really interesting challenges that my team came up with. And then being able to work on the challenges the next year, I was amazed by the graphics that marketing pulled together from like, because we just give them, I think we just genuinely just give them like, here's our script, here's kind of like the general outline that we want, maybe like specific places from the lands of ignition. Can you come up with like backgrounds for this place?
It's definitely become just it's become a whole thing. I remember when the Build-a-thon was just Travis and Kevin like on a stage with podiums and like their computers, and they just were kind of like, and then Kent had to just kind of wildly run around and fill an hour with his with his comedy and talking about what they were building. And yeah, now that we've pulled in other integrators to do this, and now we're pulling in students to do this, and the whole competition thing. I love the leaderboard. I don't know who makes those leaderboards and stuff like that. Those are really cool.
I'm also really excited for what media team comes up with for Build-a-thon presentation this year too.
I always also really like what Opto 22 builds for us,
Yes.
all like the Galton board was really cool. That car wash station, like that was elaborate. I hope more people got a chance to see that up close because the details on that, like they had like pictures, I think, of like Travis and Kevin like inside the buildings.
It was cute.
And
it was super cute.
They're always cool. I just think that Benson and his team, I don't know where they find the time, frankly.
There were some like popcorn questions that I came up with for the end of the session where it was like, hee hee, that's so funny. Hopefully you like them, but yeah, like outside of work, what do you do?
My husband and I are very into like DIY house projects. Like we we like will hate some light in some room, and so we'll like try to make our own, and or like we'll hate the color of some room, and so we'll paint it, or we've done like our own electrical. We've I just like all kinds of weird projects around the house. Stripping the paint off of the brick. Like we had this brick that was all out front of our house, and somebody had painted over it with like what I can only describe as a band-aid color. It was like this weird like light brown. I hated it. We didn't know what the brick
Flesh.
looked like underneath. Yeah, so I put like
Fleshy.
I put like this like the paint remover on it, and then just was out there blasting it for weeks with the pressure washer, and it was like this pretty red brick. But we didn't know if it was going to be black brick or white. Well, like we didn't know what kind of brick, but just things like that. Yeah.
I have so much respect for people who do DIY housework. I cannot do house
I
for the
cannot
life
do
of
house.
me. Because like I have so much, like even just the simplest thing as like hanging up artwork. Suddenly I don't know anything. How do I how do I nail something to the when it comes to creative fields, I feel like people don't know like exactly what they want to do with their art, with their creativity. Like how do you finesse your creativity into something that can feed you? If I'm being that came a little harsh. And I've kind of experienced it myself too, as well. When I was little, I really wanted to be in game development. I love drawing. I love art. I love all the things that you do. Um, like I love animation. I love comics. Like I just grew up loving all of these creative things, and actually, Ignition gives me an like an outlet for creativity because of the UX and UI design. But I remember like being younger, kind of like I don't know how to make this a career. Like, do I really want to compete with everyone else in the industry that's like super creative, super artistic? Like they touch a pencil and a pen or and like onto a paper and it's just like a creative like masterwork of art. How do I compete with that? Like stuff like that. Like wow, yapped so much. That all goes to say, do you have any do you have any advice, kind words for people who are also creative, that maybe might be seeking, any like other alternative careers, or just might be lost in life? It's getting deep.
So I actually do go speak at universities sometimes, like to some like freshman, sophomore kids that are like in graphic design or in media, and they have that same question, like how do I find a job where I can be creative? How do I find these careers? And at least what worked for me and the advice that I usually give is, if you're looking at an industry like I was at inductive automation, and you see that they don't have social media, they don't have videos, they don't really have graphic design, that is like getting in the door with companies like that are trying to find their voice, trying to find their branding, trying to find their, because I think that can be a really good outlet for people that are either really talented or just kind of starting out, because you come in and you kind of get to be that person that gets to define what that looks like. The website didn't look like it does until us new baby graphic designers came in, and we were like, what about colors? Did anyone think of colors? What if we
Love
have a
baby.
YouTube channel? Yeah, like what if we create like some cool icons for each department? What if it's like you kind of find a way to establish yourself within organizations where they might need just a little bit more help, where they might just not really. I think that's another, this is kind of off topic, but I think that's something that I've learned too is very unique, especially in this space, is people are always very shocked when they find out that inductive automation has an in-house marketing team. I think a lot of them assume that we freelance this out, because when we tell them, oh no, we make the website, we make the videos, we do the social media, they're always like, because most of them hire people to do that. They find freelancers to do that. So I think you just shouldn't be scared of industries that seem technical. Don't be afraid of things that don't seem like places where you can be creative, because I think you will find a way to establish yourself and make a name for yourself and really kickstart things. At least was my experience, and would be my advice to people that, are maybe looking at those kinds of, companies, and being, because I think a lot of graphic designers, especially, they all think, oh, I'm going to go work for like Pinterest, or I'm going to go work for some big manufacturing firm, or I'm going to be getting to design logos for these big brand name companies. And you certainly can do that, but it's insanely competitive.
What is a marketing hot take you have that you will die on the hill for?
I don't know if it's a hot take.
Maybe a lukewarm take?
We'll see if there's something to this. This is something that I have said to my team numerous times, and it's something that I genuinely believe in. I think that a good story outweighs phenomenal graphics, footage, any of that kind of stuff. I think we've all seen that like style over substance kind of content where it's like, yeah, this looked cool, but like, what the heck was that even an ad for? Like, companies will drop millions of dollars to make these high budget, really cool, fantastical commercials, but then you remember this ad with a snake, or you remember like you get a good story and you just kind of take a narrative approach first. I don't know that that's a hot take, but like, I would always take bad graphics or okay subpar footage if the story is solid every time. I do not even want to talk to somebody that's like, I made this really cool footage, but like did not think at all about the script. I'd be like, doesn't move me, sir or madam.
Disclaimer, I'm not a marketing professional. I'm this is not my job. But one of my favorite ads to this day, it's like an ad series, more like, is a Japanese candy where it's a long strip of like gummy candy. You can just like rip it, and it has like a song attached to it, and there was a storyline from start to finish of like um that might be a little inappropriate. So like the story was so stupidly funny that I still remember it to this day. Like, I encountered this ad like years ago, maybe like 10 years ago. I don't know how old the ad is. Also, the candy is delicious. But yeah, to your point, like they don't have any like fancy graphics, like fancy camera work, like just like not high tech at all. But the storyline was great. It was funny. It was catchy. The song was catchy. It ended up with like it ended up with like two guys falling in love. It was so fun. It was really fun. I'll send it to you. You know what? I agree with your take. The little trend that
Hmm.
you see with me is like I love stupid stuff. If it's stupid, I love it.
Yeah, I truly think that you don't need to take yourself too seriously. I mean, obviously, being in this industry, we have to make videos about ignition. We have to explain architectures. We have to talk about what, we have to sell the architectures and the different versions of ignition, obviously. But it's like we can also make a music video sometime, or we can also do like a little game show, or we could, do some silly content, and people like it.
Okay, I have two more questions for you. I'm sorry, like I'm
Let's
taking up.
do it.
Okay. What is something that you wish engineers understood from your perspective?
Since I'm like, I'm obviously on the marketing side of things, so I'm not in the actual world of people that are using ignition and building with ignition. So I feel like there's not really anything that I would know that I wish they knew. But I will say one thing, just like as someone in marketing, I do wish that more, whether it's engineers or integrators or anyone out in the industrial space, understood that we are here as a resource, like not just tech support, not just the sales engineers, not just like marketing too. Like, we can be a very powerful resource for marketing assets, or to do co-marketing things like webinars or the project highlights. Like, that's more of a selfish, like, I wish they knew type of plug, but it's true. I mean, it's like, we don't always need just like the top premier integrators to always be the ones collaborating with us. I mean, there's students out there doing really, really cool stuff with Ignition. There's people that are just getting started with their careers that are doing little projects. Like, we love all that stuff, and our marketing team will shout it from the rooftops and share it on social media and bring you on our podcast and bring, like, we love people sharing their stories, and I wish people weren't scared to reach out to us, I guess. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but it's the best answer I have right now.
I've mentioned that you just celebrated 12 years with IA. What's what made you stick around for so long? What's the like key to the longevity?
The key, this feels like somebody asking, like, what's the secret to a long marriage? Like,
Right? It's like, what do you eat?
yeah, yeah. How do you stay looking young forever? How do you know? So why does somebody stay at Inductive? Like, why do I stay at Inductive? What I do specifically as a multimedia manager, like, it just evolves and changes all the time with whatever new craziness we've got going on. Like, I never, when I applied here over a decade ago, would have imagined that one day I would be making music videos with Travis and Kevin, or like a rap battle music videos for the Build-a-thon. Like, that was so far beyond the realm of what I thought this job was going to include, right? Like, that I didn't know I was going to be doing case studies and getting to go to all these cool industries. I didn't know that we were going to be doing this conference and all that comes with that. I didn't know that we were going to do like this like, all of this stuff is just, every year there's some new thing, some new project, new podcast. This is a whole new thing, you know? Yeah, it stays fresh for sure.
I think we should wrap up. See, I wrote up a really nice intro, and then my brain was like, no outro.
We don't need an outro. Just cut to black.